stand out here with me for a second, right at your curb, turn around and look at your own backyard the way a stranger does. You clicked because you saw $10 store fixes and a backyard that changed. Good. You made the right call. Because here is what nobody tells you. The verdict on your yard is already forming, silently, before a single word gets spoken. A buyer decides. A neighbor decides. An appraiser decides. And most of that decision is about one thing you probably stopped seeing years ago. Whether your space feels like a room or like a leftover. I have spent decades quoting jobs and standing next to people the exact moment their face changes. I once watched a couple walk into a backyard, take 3 steps, and go quiet. Not because it was ugly, because they could see straight into the neighbor's cluttered side yard, and suddenly the house they loved felt exposed. They never said it out loud. They just stopped smiling. That house sat 41 extra days, so stick with me to the last stop. Because there is one detail, one finish that costs under $10 that decides whether your whole screen reads as a real feature worth thousands or as a sad plastic curtain. And this matters whether you plan to sell next spring or stay for the next 20 years, because you are the one who lives inside that verdict every single evening. Let me walk it with you. First stop, come around the side of the house with me to that spot everybody has and nobody wants to look at, the air conditioning unit, the trash bins, the pool pump, the place where the hose lives, its tangled little life. Here is what happens to a person's eye when they round that corner. It snags. The brain is scanning for calm, for order, for a place it wants to be, and instead it hits gray metal and plastic. That snag is tiny, less than a second, but it registers as this yard is work. And work is the single most expensive word in a buyer's head. Now, most people think you fix this with an expensive prefab screen, the kind that runs $80 to $200 at the big box store. You do not. This is where the dollar store trick actually beats the expensive version, and here is why. You take those faux boxwood squares, the little interlocking greenery panels, the ones that run $1.25 each. You zip tie them, another $1 for a whole pack, onto a cheap wire cube grid or a section of garden fencing. 8 to 10 panels, and you have wrapped that ugly corner in living looking green for about $12. But here is the insider part. The reason this works is not that it hides the unit. It is that green at eye level reads as maintained. Your eye cannot tell in 2 seconds that those leaves are plastic. It only registers lush, cared for, intentional. The same corner that whispered, "This yard is work," now whispers, "Somebody loves this place." Therefore, the snag never happens. And a person who does not snag keeps walking, keeps imagining themselves living there, keeps building the yes. Now, before you go thinking every green thing you stack up will save you, let me stop you. Because there is a version of this exact fix that makes the yard look cheaper than doing nothing at all. And that leads me straight to the second stop. If you want to go deeper than what I can show you in a single walk, I put everything, every fix, every sightline trick, every sequence system I use on real properties into a guide called the Yard System, part of a set that includes First Look and Yard Elevated. It is available in the description for $97, and it is the closest thing I can give you to standing next to me on your own property. Every chapter is built around the exact details that the trade never volunteers, because the trade profits when you do not know them. If you are serious about moving the needle on your yard before the next set of eyes lands on it, the link is right below this video. So how do you build that feeling of enclosure on a dollar store budget? Walk with me to the fence line, the property line, the place where your yard ends and the world starts looking back at you. This is where the biggest silent verdict of all gets made, and almost nobody sees it coming. Exposure. Whether a person can sit in your yard and feel held or feel watched, because a backyard that feels watched is a backyard nobody uses, and a yard nobody uses reads, on some deep level, as a yard that is not really part of the house. Here is a number that stopped me cold when I first read it. The National Association of Realtors, in their Outdoor Features report, found that a well-defined outdoor living area is one of the top features buyers say they want, and homeowners themselves reported some of the highest satisfaction scores of any project after adding one. We are talking joy scores near the top of the entire list, not because people are shallow, because the space you actually want to sit in feels like extra square footage, even though the tax assessor never counted it. This is where your tension rods and your curtain panels come in. You take 2 tension rods, about $1.25 each, and mount them between fence posts or between 2 vertical supports. Then you hang outdoor-style fabric panels or even the dollar store tablecloths in a neutral linen tone, and you have created a soft wall where there was open exposure. For a taller, sturdier version, you grab lengths of PVC pipe, a frame made from PVC, joined at the corners, runs you maybe $8 to $12 total, and you drape or stretch fabric or that faux greenery across it. Now you have a freestanding screen. You can move anywhere. The sight line is broken. But here is the mistake I made myself years ago on my own patio. I hung a screen that was too short. It came up to about chest height when I was standing, which meant the second I sat down, it was fine, but the second anyone stood up, their eyes cleared the top and the whole illusion collapsed. The screen has to work at both heights, sitting and standing, or it stops being privacy and starts being a decoration that fools no one. Fix that, and the yard stops feeling like a stage. It starts feeling like a room with walls. And a room with walls is a room people mentally move into. Therefore, your fence line goes from the weakest part of your verdict to the strongest. But there is a spot even more decisive than the fence, and most people walk right past it every single day without seeing it. Come with me to the entry, the gate, the path that leads from the front of the house into the back. This is the threshold, and thresholds do something powerful to the human brain. They tell you what kind of place you are about to enter. If that side gate is a rusty chain link opening into a view of trash cans and a bare patch of dirt, the verdict is set before anyone even reaches the yard. The best backyard in the neighborhood cannot recover from a bad threshold because the person has already decided, here is what I have watched happen 100 times. A buyer comes through a mean little gate and their shoulders go up. They get protective, guarded, then they hit the actual yard, and it is nice. But now they are looking for what is wrong because the threshold told them to be suspicious. You never get that trust back for free. So we fix the threshold cheap. Dollar store artificial ivy garland, the trailing kind, runs about $1.25 a strand. You weave 6 or 8 strands through that chain link gate, and suddenly the gate reads as a garden entrance instead of a security afterthought. Add a pair of dollar store hanging baskets on either post, some faux trailing greenery spilling out, and you have framed the threshold. Now here is the layer that separates people who get this from people who do not. Symmetry. The human eye reads symmetry as intention and intention as value. One basket looks like an accident. 2 matching baskets, 1 on each side, read as designed. It costs you $1 extra, and it changes the entire message of that entry. But greenery and symmetry only carry the threshold so far, because there is a force working against you the whole time. And this is the part almost nobody will say out loud. Here is the uncomfortable truth about why your yard drifts into looking cheap without you ever deciding to let it. There is an entire industry that profits when you believe the only real fix is the expensive one. The prefab screen at $200, the custom fence at $4,000, the landscaper who quotes you a full redesign because a redesign is where his margin lives. None of them make a dime when you solve the problem for $14 in dollar store parts. So nobody with a truck and an invoice is ever going to tell you it works, and it goes deeper than money. It is habituation. You stopped seeing your own gate the day after you got used to it. The eyesore by the side of the house became invisible to you sometime around your second summer in the place. That is not a flaw in you. That is how every human brain works. It edits out the familiar so it can notice the new. The problem is that a buyer, a neighbor, an appraiser, they are all seeing it new. They see exactly what you trained yourself to ignore. That is the real reason a home can look cheaper than it is. Not because the owner has bad taste, because the owner stopped looking, and the people who could profit from an expensive fix have no reason to hand them a cheap one. So let me keep handing you the cheap ones. Walk with me to the patio or the deck or whatever slab of the yard you actually sit on. This is the heart of the outdoor room, and it is where the enclosure trick pays off the most, because this is where people picture their own evenings. Here's what a buyer does, unconsciously. When they step onto your patio, they look up and out. They check the ceiling of the space, meaning the sky and whatever is overhead, and they check the edges, meaning what surrounds them. If it is all open, all exposed, the space feels temporary, like a place you pass through. If it has a defined edge and something overhead, it feels like a destination, a place you stay. So we build both. Cheap. For the edges, you run those faux greenery panels or a dollar store lattice roll along the open side of the patio. For overhead, this is my favorite trick. You string the dollar store outdoor string lights, about $1.25 for a set of solar ones in many stores, across the space from a post to the house. Lights overhead create a ceiling out of thin air. They tell the brain, this is a room, even when there is nothing but sky above, and here is a number worth holding on to. Studies on outdoor living consistently find that defined, usable outdoor space is among the features that most improve how quickly a home sells and how buyers perceive its value, with landscaping and outdoor improvements returning in various real estate analyses anywhere from 100% to over 200% of what you put in. Virginia Tech research led by a horticulture professor named Alex Niamira found that quality landscaping could raise a home's perceived value by as much as 12 to 15%. On a $300,000 home, that is $36,000 to $45,000 of perception, and you are moving the needle on it with parts that cost less than a tank of gas. Now, I know what a chunk of you are thinking right about now. You are thinking, this is all fine for people trying to sell, but I am staying put, so why do I care about the verdict? Stay with me, because this next part is built specifically for you, the one who is not going anywhere. Here is why the verdict matters even more when you are staying. A seller lives with the verdict for a few months. You live with it for years. Every single evening you walk into a yard that either invites you to sit down or quietly tells you it is not finished. That feeling compounds. It is the difference between a yard you use 4 times a summer and a yard you use 4 times a week, and the fix that serves both of you is the same fix. Take the single, cheapest, most powerful move on this whole walkthrough, grouping. You take your dollar store planters, the ones that run $1.25, you fill them with a mix of real trailing plants and a couple of taller faux stems, and instead of scattering them one here and one there, you cluster them in groups of 3 at different heights, 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 low, right where your screen meets the patio. This costs you maybe $5 to $7 for a whole cluster. No contractor, no tools, 20 minutes. And it does 2 things at once. For the person staying, it turns a bare corner into a spot your eye rests on, a little piece of calm you feel every night. For the person selling, that same cluster reads as a maintained, layered, cared-for space, the exact signal that flips a buyer from cautious to comfortable. One fix, both outcomes. That is the kind of move that is worth more than its price by a factor I would be embarrassed to say out loud on a job site. And it sets up the last thing, because everything I have shown you so far, the greenery, the enclosure, the threshold, the grouping, all of it depends on one final detail that decides whether the whole thing reads as real or reads as a hack. And this is the stop I have been holding back the entire walk. Come stand right here with me and look at your screen from about 15 feet away. That is roughly the distance a buyer first sees it from, and the distance your own eye catches it from the patio. Now here is the tell. The single thing that separates a screen that looks like a designed feature from a screen that screams dollar store, and it is not the material, it is not the greenery, it is not even the money, it is the frame and the bottom gap. Let me explain what I mean, because this is the thing I learned the hard way, and nobody on a single job ever pointed it out to me. A privacy screen that floats, that has a floppy top edge and a gap of open air between the bottom of the screen and the ground, reads as temporary. The brain sees that gap and that flop and files it instantly under, this is propped up, this will blow over, this is not part of the house. And once something reads as temporary, it reads as cheap, no matter what it is made of or what it cost. A screen that is crisp at the top and grounded at the bottom, meaning it runs all the way down to the deck or the soil with no daylight showing under it, reads as built-in permanent. Installed, part of the property, and permanent is the word that carries value, because permanent is the thing an appraiser can count and a buyer can trust. I figured this out on my own patio, standing exactly where you are now. I had spent a weekend building a greenery screen, and from the house it looked fine, but every time I walked up to it from the yard, something felt off, cheap, and I could not name it. Then one evening, the low sun came under it and lit up that 4-inch gap of open air at the bottom, and I saw it. The screen was hovering. It looked like a costume, not a wall. I dropped it down to the deck, tightened the top edge so it stopped waving, and the whole thing transformed. Same parts, same plants, same money. It went from looking like something I stuck up to looking like something that was always there. So here is exactly how you finish it this weekend for almost nothing. For the top, you run a length of PVC or a thin wood furring strip along the top edge and secure your panels to it so the top line is dead straight and does not flop. That is a couple of dollars. For the bottom, you either extend your greenery panels all the way to the ground, or you set a row of your dollar store planters along the base so there is no open daylight underneath. That row of planters does double duty. It grounds the screen and it gives you that grouped, layered look at the same time. Straight top, grounded bottom, no gap. That is the whole secret. It is the difference between a person thinking cute idea and a person thinking who installed this. And that second thought, who installed this, is the exact thought that adds value because it moves your screen out of the decoration category and into the feature category in the buyer's mind. Here is why this was always hidden from you. The trade never points at the gap because the trade is not selling you a gap fix. The trade is selling you the whole prefab unit that comes grounded and framed from the factory at 10 times the price. The frame and the grounding are the value, and they baked it into a $200 product and let you believe you were paying for the materials. You were not. You were paying for the two details I just handed you for $4. That is the signal that was there the whole time. The gap at the bottom, the flop at the top. Every person who ever judged your yard read it in a fraction of a second and never told you because they could not name it either. They just felt cheap or felt solid and moved on. Now you can name it. Now you can read it. And now you can fix it before the next set of eyes ever lands on it. Let me tie the whole walk together because it all points the same direction. The corner you hid, the fence line you enclosed, the threshold you framed, the patio you gave a ceiling, the clusters you grouped, and the frame you grounded. Every one of those is the same move, over and over. You are taking a space that read as leftover and making it read as a room. That is the entire game. A yard that feels like a room feels like the house is bigger, better cared for, and worth more, and it feels that way whether the person judging it is a buyer with a checkbook or you on a Tuesday evening, deciding whether tonight is a night you go sit outside. And here's the part that should make you a little bit angry in a good way. None of it required a contractor. None of it required a permit. None of it required more than about $40 or $50 for the entire backyard if you did every single stop. The screen industry, the redesign, upsell, the $4,000 fence quote, all of it was betting that you would never learn that the value is in the details, not the dollars. The greenery is cheap. The enclosure is cheap. The framing and the grounding are cheap. What is expensive is not knowing which details the eye actually reads, and now you know. So walk your own yard tomorrow morning in the new light and look at it like a stranger for once. Notice the corner you stopped seeing. Notice the gap under whatever you have propped up, because the truth is you were never the person with a cheap yard. You were the person nobody handed the $14 answer to, and that is a very different thing. You are the kind of homeowner who would rather hear the blunt verdict than be flattered into overspending. That is why you made it all the way to the end of this walk instead of clicking off after the first easy tip. You want to see your own curb the way everybody else already sees it, and now you can, and that is a kind of power most of your neighbors will never have. So tell me, of every stop we made, which one just made you nervous about your own yard? The ugly corner by the side of the house the exposed fence line, the mean little gate, or that floating gap at the bottom of a screen you already put up? Be honest, drop it in the comments right now. I read them and I answer. And while you are down there, tell me where you are watching from, because I am always curious what part of the country these yards are in. If this changed the way you look at your own backyard, come join the homeowners who are learning to see their property through a buyer's eyes before a buyer ever shows up, instead of finding out the hard way at the closing table. Because the next walk I am taking you on is the one detail at the front of the house, right at the driveway, that I have watched knock thousands off an offer before the buyer even opened the car door, and once you see it, you will never unsee it either. Stay with me one more minute. This walk gave you the overview, but inside the curb appeal circle, I pick up right where we stopped and take you through the full sightline system. In there, you can ask me your own question, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You're not alone. Homeowners like you are already inside with me. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen, cancel anytime, one click, no risk. Now, before you spend a single dollar more, let me show you the privacy hacks that need no approval at all. No permission, no headaches, just the private backyard you deserve. It's starting right now.